A Zen master sits in the quiet of the early morning, the only sounds the whispering of the trees and the distant sound of birds calling out to the dawn. His disciple, a young monk named Kaito, stands before him, eyes full of uncertainty. "Master, why do I feel so lost?" Kaito asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have followed your teachings, meditated for hours, but the peace I seek eludes me. Why does this yearning still burn inside me?" The master's eyes, deep and calm, meet Kaito's, and he responds, "The mind is like a mirror, Kaito. It reflects the world as it is, but it is clouded by your desires. Let go of what you think you need, and the mirror will be clear." Kaito listens intently, but confusion lingers in his heart. How could letting go of everything bring clarity? Was it that simple? He pondered, his thoughts swirling around him like the morning mist. Days turned into weeks, and Kaito continued his meditation under the guidance of the Zen Master. Yet, despite his diligence, he still felt like a shadow of the clarity he sought. The Master gave him no direct answers, but instead continued to challenge him in subtle ways. One morning, as the fog still lingered over the mountains, the Master asked Kaito to sweep the temple grounds. "Sweep the floor until you see the dust for what it truly is," the Master instructed. Kaito took the broom and began to sweep the stone courtyard, each stroke seeming to carry more weight than the last. But the dust never seemed to settle, no matter how much he swept. Frustrated, he stopped. "Master, no matter how hard I try, the dust will not vanish," Kaito said. The Master smiled and said, "The dust is not your enemy, Kaito. It is only your attachment to it that binds you." Kaito found himself staring at the dust, his mind wrestling with the teachings. Why did the dust seem endless? The Master's words echoed in his head. "It is only your attachment to it that binds you." Was it his attachment to success, to perfection, that was the problem? As Kaito continued sweeping, his thoughts began to quiet, and for a moment he felt something change within him. He stopped. The broom was in his hands, and the dust was still there. But he didn't feel frustrated anymore. There was something liberating about simply sweeping without expectation. He looked up at the Master, who nodded gently, as if seeing the shift within him. "There is no end to the sweeping, Kaito, but there is peace in the act of it." A few days later, the Master led Kaito to the mountain's edge, where the sun began to dip behind the distant peaks. "Look at the horizon," the Master instructed. "What do you see?" Kaito stared at the vast expanse, his mind trying to grasp the words. "I see the sky and the mountains, Master," Kaito replied. "What else?" the Master asked, his voice gentle. Kaito thought for a moment before responding. I see the separation between the sky and the earth." The Master smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "That is the illusion, Kaito. The sky and the earth are one. You see separation only because you have been taught to do so." Kaito felt a wave of realization wash over him. The boundaries he had placed on his world were not real, but constructs of the mind. "How do I see without boundaries, Master?" Kaito asked. The Master replied, "You must empty the mind, Kaito. Only then will the world reveal its oneness." The following days became a blur of practice and contemplation for Kaito. He meditated deeply, allowing his thoughts to come and go like clouds in the sky. But no matter how hard he tried, he felt a lingering sense of doubt. Was he truly letting go, or was he still grasping at the idea of letting go? One evening, after a particularly long meditation session, Kaito approached the Master. "Master," he began hesitantly, "I am still unsure. I have been practicing as you instructed, but I feel like I am still attached to the idea of letting go. How do I truly surrender?" The Master smiled gently and said, "Surrender is not an act of force, Kaito. It is the natural unfolding of the heart when it is not bound by expectations. There is nothing to grasp, nothing to control. Let go of the need to let go, and you will be free." Kaito sat in silence, feeling a sense of deep peace settle over him. The following days felt different to Kaito. He could no longer shake the sensation that something had changed deep within him, though the world around him seemed unchanged. His meditation practice had transformed, no longer a struggle to attain peace, but a practice of simply being. Still, the tension inside him remained, like an unspoken question. One morning, as the master led Kaito through the temple's garden, he asked, "Master, I feel lighter, but the questions inside me persist. I am unsure whether I have truly understood." The master's expression was calm, yet his eyes held something deeper, a quiet knowing. "The truth is not something you can understand with the mind, Kaito. Understanding comes when you stop seeking. Stop looking for the answer, be the question itself." Kaito sat at the edge of the temple pond, gazing at the water as it rippled gently in the breeze. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply, trying to let go of the confusion swirling in his mind. Suddenly, the voice of the master broke the silence. "The pond is still when you are still, Kaito. The ripples appear when you grasp at the surface. Let go of your need to control, and the ripples will fade." Kaito's eyes flickered open, and he turned to the master, understanding dawning on him. The ripples weren't caused by the pond. They were the result of his own movements. He wasn't separate from the pond, he was part of it. As the days passed, Kaito became more attuned to the Zen Master's teachings, though he struggled with one particular lesson: the absence of self. "I understand the need to surrender, to let go of attachments," Kaito confided one evening. "But how do I dissolve the self? How do I give up what I've spent my whole life believing I am?" The master placed a hand gently on Kaito's shoulder. "The self is a story, Kaito. A story you tell yourself over and over again. But you are not the story. You are the awareness behind it. Drop the story, and you drop the self." Kaito's heart skipped a beat. To let go of the story of who he was, could he really do that? That night, Kaito lay awake in his simple room, staring at the ceiling. The master's words echoed in his mind. "You are the awareness behind the story." He tried to quiet his thoughts, but they came rushing in one after another. Who was he without his thoughts? Who was he without his past, his memories, and his identity? As if in response to his inner turmoil, the master appeared at the door, silhouetted by the moonlight. "The mind is a river," the master said softly. "You cannot control the flow, but you can let it pass. When you stop clinging to the river, you will see that you are the space in which it flows." Kaito's eyes widened as a deep peace washed over him. For the first time, he felt the river of his thoughts drift away, and the space around him seemed infinite. The following morning, Kaito returned to his meditation, this time without expectation. He sat in stillness, no longer attempting to quiet the mind, but allowing it to flow freely. As the minutes passed, the space around him felt wider, more expansive. He was not trying to be calm or enlightened, he was simply being. His breathing slowed, and in that moment, a profound clarity emerged. He was not separate from the world, nor was he defined by the story of who he thought he was. He simply was. He smiled softly, realizing that the answer had always been within him. "I have no self," Kaito whispered to himself, and for the first time, he felt free. The following week, Kaito faced his greatest test yet. The Zen Master assigned him a task: to climb the mountain that lay beyond the temple grounds, in silence and without stopping. "Only when you reach the top will you find your answer," the Master had said. Kaito set out early in the morning, his steps echoing on the rugged path. The mountain was steep, and the air grew thin as he climbed higher. His body ached, but he pressed on, driven by the belief that reaching the top would bring him some kind of enlightenment. Hours passed and he felt his spirit faltering. Every time he felt he could go no further, a quiet voice whispered in his mind, "Keep going." But what was he really searching for? When Kaito reached a plateau, the sky above seemed to open up, revealing a vast expanse of rolling hills below. He paused to catch his breath, staring at the horizon, his chest rising and falling with each strained breath. "I have come so far," he thought. "What will I find at the top?" But as he stood there, taking in the view, a sudden realization struck him. He had been so focused on the destination, so fixated on reaching the top that he had forgotten to truly experience the climb. The path itself, the moment he was living, had slipped by unnoticed. It was not the summit that mattered, it was the steps he took to get there. A wave of peace washed over him as he slowly began walking again, not to reach the top, but to embrace the journey itself. With newfound clarity, Kaito continued his ascent, each step more deliberate and present. He no longer fought against his exhaustion or struggled to push forward. He simply walked, accepting each step for what it was. As he neared the top, the air grew colder and the winds picked up, but Kaito didn't notice. His mind, once chaotic and filled with expectation, was now still. The world around him seemed to slow, and in that moment he understood. The answer he had sought all along was not in the summit or in the completion of the task, but in his acceptance of each step along the way. The goal had never been to reach the top, but to be present with every part of the journey. Finally, Kaito reached the top of the mountain, where the Zen Master awaited him. The wind howled, but there was a profound stillness in Kaito's heart. "Master," Kaito said, his voice calm, "I have climbed to the top, but I now realize that the summit was never the answer. The journey itself was the answer. The struggle, the frustration, the effort. All of it was part of the path to clarity." The Zen Master nodded, a slight smile playing on his lips. "You have learned, Kaito. The goal was not to reach the peak, but to lose yourself in each step. True enlightenment is not a destination, it is a way of being, moment by moment." The Master led Kaito back down the mountain in silence, as if no words were necessary. As they walked together, Kaito reflected on the transformation he had undergone. He had begun this journey desperate for answers, driven by an ego that sought validation and completion. But now, he understood that life was not about seeking something to complete him. It was about being present, letting go of the need to grasp at anything. The world was already whole. He just needed to open his eyes and see it as it was. "Thank you, Master," Kaito whispered as they reached the temple grounds. The Master smiled softly. "The journey is not over, Kaito. It has only just begun." And in that moment, Kaito realized that the true path was not a destination, but a continuous unfolding, a practice of presence in each moment. In the days following his realization, Kaito found himself in a different place emotionally and spiritually. He woke each morning with the same routine, but this time, the meditation was no longer a practice to achieve something. It was a practice of simply being. One evening, as the sun set, Kaito sat by the edge of the temple's pond, watching the reflection of the sky merge with the water. The Zen Master approached him, breaking the silence. "Kaito," he said, "you have learned much, but now we must turn inward. You have learned to let go of your attachments, but can you also let go of your desire for peace?" Kaito turned to face the Master, uncertainty creeping into his heart. "I thought peace was the goal," he said. "Isn't that what we are all seeking?" The Master smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Peace is not something to seek, Kaito. It is what remains when you stop seeking." The next morning, Kaito sat in his usual meditation spot, trying to still his mind, but the thoughts rushed in, relentless and chaotic. His ego, once so present in his search for answers, had now become even more evident. "How can I let go of the desire for peace if I am still trapped in this constant striving?" Kaito wondered aloud. The Zen Master entered the room, sitting beside him in silence. After a long pause, the Master spoke. "The more you strive for peace, the further it moves away from you. When you stop wanting peace, you will discover it was always here." Kaito's brow furrowed. "How do I stop wanting something that feels so essential?" The Master looked at him, his voice gentle. "By realizing that you have never been separate from it. Let go of the idea that peace is a destination. It is not. Peace is what you are, when you cease to grasp for it." Later that day, Kaito walked through the temple grounds, feeling the weight of his mind lessened, though the questions still lingered. He approached the stone garden, where the Zen Master often worked. The stones, placed meticulously in the sand, represented a kind of order, yet the arrangement seemed to speak of imperfection. The Master joined him, noticing his gaze. "What do you see, Kaito?" he asked. Kaito studied the garden, his mind clearing. "I see perfection in the disorder," Kaito replied. "The chaos of the stones in the sand feels more complete than a perfectly arranged pattern." The master nodded. "Yes, sometimes perfection comes not from control, but from acceptance of the flow. It is not the shape of the stones, but the space between them that matters." Kaito felt the profound weight of this teaching settle into his chest. Perhaps peace wasn't something he had to force into being. Perhaps it was already there, within the spaces of his life. That evening, as Kaito sat in his room, he reflected on his journey thus far. He thought back to his earlier days of desperation, when he sought peace, as if it were a distant goal. He thought of the countless hours spent meditating, fighting against his thoughts, trying to achieve something he could not define. Now he understood that peace was not something to be achieved. It was something to be realized. "I don't need to chase it," Kaito whispered to himself. "I only need to stop running." A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. It was the Zen Master. "Kaito, the mind is like a child. It clings to what it wants. But when you let go of your attachment to desires, the mind quiets naturally." Kaito looked up, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "So I stop chasing peace, and it finds me?" The master nodded. "Exactly. But the peace is not outside of you. It has always been within." The next morning, Kaito stood at the edge of the temple courtyard, staring out at the mist-covered mountains. A sense of stillness had overtaken him. He realized that he no longer needed to search for something to fill the empty spaces in his heart. Why? The emptiness itself was full. It was complete in its own right. He breathed deeply, feeling the air fill his lungs, and for the first time in his life, he was truly present, not seeking, not striving, just being. The Zen Master stood beside him, his presence like a gentle breeze. "What do you see now, Kaito?" he asked. Kaito smiled, looking out over the landscape. "I see everything, and nothing at all." The master nodded. "This is the moment of clarity. When you stop seeking, you see the world as it is, not as you want it to be." Kaito awoke early the next morning, feeling the cool air around him as he stepped onto the temple grounds. The weight of his previous struggles seemed to have lifted, but something deeper was stirring within him. The Zen Master had told him that peace was not something to chase, yet Kaito still felt the urge to find answers, to understand more. He walked to the edge of the temple garden, where the morning sun broke through the mist, and for a moment he simply stood there. "Master," Kaito called softly, looking back. "Is peace truly found when we stop searching for it?" The Zen Master appeared beside him, as if he had always been there. His gaze was steady. "You are learning, Kaito, but remember, it is not the searching that keeps us from peace, but the attachment to the outcome of that search. Release the need to know, and you will find that what you seek was always here." Later that day, Kaito sat in the meditation hall, facing the wall. The sounds of the temple, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of birds, seemed to blend into the silence of his mind. He no longer fought his thoughts. Instead, he observed them, allowing them to come and go, like clouds drifting across the sky. Yet, despite this newfound calm, a question lingered in his heart. "What am I truly seeking?" he whispered to himself. As if on cue, the Zen Master entered the room, sitting across from him in silence. After a long pause, the Master spoke. "The moment you ask that question, Kaito, you begin to see the answer. The seeking itself is the illusion." Kaito looked up, his brow furrowed. "You mean I was never lost?" The Master smiled, his voice calm. "Only the mind believes it is lost. The truth has always been here." As the days passed, Kaito's practice deepened. He no longer felt the need to prove himself or to chase after enlightenment. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Yet, one evening, as the temple bell tolled, Kaito found himself troubled. He sat with a fellow disciple, who had become a quiet companion on his journey. "I feel so still," Kaito said, almost uncertain. But is it enough? Shouldn't I be doing more? The fellow disciple, always serene, looked at him with gentle eyes. Stillness is not an action, Kaito. It is the ultimate action. You are learning to be present, and that is the most powerful thing you can do. Kaito sighed, looking at the ground. But I've always felt the need to do something, to achieve. The fellow disciple smiled. Sometimes the greatest achievement is realizing that you are already whole. The Zen Master called Kaito to the meditation hall one morning, his voice calm and steady. Kaito, today we will try a new form of practice. Kaito sat down, eager but curious. The master handed him a simple, smooth stone. This stone represents your mind. Hold it in your hand and feel its weight. Kaito took the stone, feeling its cool surface. The master continued, now let it go. Release it and let it fall. Kaito hesitated, but then he opened his hand, watching as the stone slipped from his fingers, landing with a soft thud. What did you feel? Asked the master. Kaito thought for a moment. A moment of freedom, he said softly. I felt it leave, but I also felt the release of control. The Zen Master nodded. That is the practice. You must release, without holding on to the fear of losing. As the day drew to a close, Kaito walked alone through the temple gardens, his mind still and clear. The struggles, the questions, the fears, they no longer seemed to weigh him down. He realized, for the first time, that the true path was not about seeking answers, but about embracing the questions themselves. He stopped by the pond and looked into the still water. The reflection of the sky, the trees, and himself seemed perfect in its imperfection. Kaito understood now that he had always been connected to everything, to the earth, to the air, to the flow of life itself. I am not separate from this, he whispered. I am part of it. A sense of peace filled his chest, and for the first time in years, Kaito knew that the journey was not about where he was going, but about being present in every step. It had been weeks since Kaito had truly found peace within himself. Yet, one morning as he stood at the edge of the temple, a subtle unease began to creep into his heart. He had learned the art of letting go, but the world outside the temple still felt like a whirlwind. The Zen Master noticed his troubled expression as he approached. You are no longer running, Kaito. Yet, what are you afraid of? Kaito looked out at the distant horizon, the bustling world beyond the temple walls. I fear that this peace, this clarity, will slip away when I leave, that the world will pull me back into its chaos. The master placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice gentle. The peace you seek is not in a place, Kaito. It is in how you engage with the world, not separate from it. Kaito nodded, still uncertain, but now aware that the next step in his journey was to carry this peace beyond the temple grounds. Kaito spent the next few days meditating on the concept of non-attachment, not just to things, but to the idea of peace itself. One evening, as he sat in the meditation hall, the fellow disciple approached him. Do you ever feel like you're just pretending to be calm? They asked. Kaito smiled softly. I used to, he admitted. But now I know that calm isn't something I have to force. It's something that arises when I stop resisting. The fellow disciple sat beside him, their voice thoughtful. I wish I could say the same. Sometimes I think peace is just a mask, and I wonder if I'm ever truly free. Kaito turned to look at them, his voice steady. Peace isn't freedom from life's storms, it's the ability to stand firm, even as the storm rages on. As the days passed, Kaito found himself increasingly involved in the temple community. He helped maintain the garden, cooked meals for the monks, and offered his time to assist others in their practice. Yet, a deeper realization began to form within him. One afternoon, while sweeping the temple grounds, the silent witness approached him. Without a word, they simply stood next to Kaito, watching as he worked. After a long silence, the silent witness spoke. You are learning, Kaito. But you must ask yourself, who are you when there is no one to see your efforts? Kaito paused, his broom resting against the stone. I suppose I am nothing without others to define me, he said, the words almost slipping from his mouth. The silent witness shook their head. A silent gesture. You are everything, even in silence. The words struck Kaito deeply. For the first time, he realized that his actions were not for recognition, but for the pure act of being. The Zen Master called Kaito to the meditation hall again. The atmosphere was different this time, more intense. Kaito, the Master said, his voice firm but gentle. You have learned much, but there is one final lesson I must share with you. You have been seeking peace, but peace is not a destination. It is a realization that you are already whole. Kaito's eyes widened. I don't understand. I thought peace was something to achieve. The Zen Master smiled, his eyes soft with wisdom. Peace is not something you acquire. It is something you uncover by removing the layers of illusion you have built around yourself. You are already complete, Kaito. There is nothing missing in you. The words reverberated in Kaito's chest, and for the first time, he felt a shift, the subtle realization that everything he had been searching for was already within him. On his final day at the temple, Kaito stood at the entrance once more, looking out at the world beyond. The teachings, the struggles, the moments of realization, they had all brought him to this point. He felt a quiet sense of contentment, not because he had found all the answers, but because he no longer felt the need to search for them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Kaito turned to the Zen Master, who had joined him at the gate. I think I finally understand, Kaito said, his voice calm. Peace is not about finding a place or a moment. It's about being in the moment, without judgment, without expectation. The Zen Master nodded, his smile gentle. You are ready, Kaito. Go forward, but never forget that you are already here. With that, Kaito stepped into the world, his heart at peace, knowing that the journey was never about the destination, but about embracing the present. Kaito's first steps outside the temple felt heavy, the world now both familiar and foreign. The streets bustled with noise, people rushing in every direction. His eyes took it all in, but his heart remained steady. The teachings of the Zen Master echoed in his mind. Be present. With each breath, he remembered that peace was not something to chase, but something to be. As he walked, he observed the world around him without judgment, the hurried pace of others, the chaos, the stillness in his own heart. He realized that this was the true test. To live with clarity in a world that never stops moving. A familiar face appeared in the crowd. The skeptic. Kaito had not seen them since his first days at the temple. The skeptic's eyes narrowed as they spotted Kaito, and a smirk formed. So, you think you found some kind of answer? They asked, their tone dripping with skepticism. Kaito paused, feeling the old tension rise. Not an answer, he said quietly, but a way to live without the constant need to search. The skeptic scoffed. That's a convenient escape, Kaito. What about ambition, purpose? Kaito looked directly into their eyes. Ambition is not wrong, but it must come from a place of peace, not fear. The skeptic, taken aback, said nothing, simply turning away as Kaito continued on his path. Later that day, Kaito sat at a small cafe, watching the world unfold around him. His mind was quiet, the noise no longer a source of discomfort. A sudden realization washed over him. This was the Zen. Not the silence of the temple, but the ability to find stillness amidst the noise. As a child ran past him, their laughter filling the air, Kaito smiled, realizing that his peace wasn't something he needed to escape into, but something he could carry within, wherever he went. The world hadn't changed, he had. And in that change, he had found his place in it. A few weeks later, Kaito returned to the temple for one final visit. The Zen Master was sitting quietly by the pond, the same serene expression on his face. Kaito approached, his steps lighter than before. Master, Kaito said, bowing slightly. I have walked the world, and I have found nothing but what I brought with me. The Zen Master nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting in a small smile. You have learned well, Kaito. There is nothing to seek, only to experience. you have come full circle. Kaito sat beside him, the two of them watching the ripples on the pond. In the silence, Kaito realized that this moment was enough. He was enough. As Kaito stood to leave, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey he had undertaken. The lessons, the struggles, the moments of doubt, they had all led him here, to this moment of clarity. As he stepped outside the temple one last time, he felt the sun warm his face, a smile gently forming on his lips. "I am not lost," Kaito whispered to himself. "I am here." And with that, he walked forward into the world, knowing that wherever life took him, peace would always be within reach.